It was the spring of 1997, and the streets of Openshaw, a deprived area of Manchester, were shrouded in a thick fog of mystery. Beneath the glow of flickering streetlights, something sinister was unfolding, something that would forever haunt the small community. On May 5, 1997, the joyful laughter of children playing on the streets would turn to the eerie silence of a missing boy, 8-year-old Jamie Lavis. Jamie, a spirited and carefree child, had been the second of 5 children to Karen and John Lavis. Life had never been easy for the Lavis family, struggling in the tough part of Manchester where every penny mattered. Despite the odds stacked against him, Jamie was known for his infectious smile and boundless energy. He loved playing football, racing around on his bike, and spent hours lost in games with his friends. On that fateful May Day, a bank holiday, Jamie was just one of many children enjoying their day off school. The morning had started like any other, Jamie darting around the streets with his brother John before they parted ways. It was a typical day for Jamie, carefree and full of promise. Little did anyone know it would be the last time Jamie would ever be seen alive. As the hours passed, the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the streets of Openshaw. The Lavis family began preparing for dinner, but one seat remained empty. Jamie had not returned home. At first, his parents, Karen and John Sr., thought little of it. Maybe Jamie had lost track of time playing with his friends. But as the minutes stretched into hours, the anxious gnawing of worry crept into their minds. By nightfall, with no sign of Jamie, panic set in. Karen and John Sr. dialed 999, their voices trembling with fear as they reported their son missing. Jamie, a sensible boy, had never run away or stayed out after dark. Something was terribly wrong. News of the disappearance quickly spread through the small community. Neighbors gathered, flashlight beams slicing through the night. They searched every corner of the neighborhood, behind bushes, in alleyways, and the many derelict buildings that dotted the area. Jamie's name echoed through the streets, but there was no reply. By May 6, 1997, Jamie's disappearance was making headlines in the local press. The Manchester Evening News carried the heartbreaking story, and soon the case was all anyone could talk about. People from every corner of Openshaw joined the search, hoping for a miracle. But it wasn't until a witness came forward that the first significant clue emerged. Darren Vickers, a 28-year-old bus driver who lived just 3 streets away from the Lavis family, claimed to have seen Jamie at the bus stop that morning. He worked the 219 route, which traveled from Manchester Piccadilly through Openshaw before heading to Ashton-under-Lyne. According to Darren, Jamie had boarded his bus that morning and sat quietly throughout the journey. At first glance, Darren's account seemed innocent enough, but something didn't sit right with the Greater Manchester Police. Darren was far too eager to insert himself into the investigation. He appeared at the Lavis family's home offering support and comfort. But the way he did it felt wrong, too rehearsed, too involved. Then came the odd comment. Darren, as he recounted the events of the morning, mentioned something strange. He wouldn't happen to be wearing a dark blue Reebok tracksuit, would he? How could Darren, a stranger to Jamie, know such intimate details? The hairs on the back of detectives' necks stood up. As the days passed, Darren's involvement in the search for Jamie grew more pronounced. He neglected his own family, spending every moment with Karen and John Sr., attending press conferences on their behalf. He even posed for photographs and interviews. He seemed obsessed with the case, but the police could shake the feeling that something was off. The Lavis family, still reeling from the shock of their son's disappearance, refused to believe that Darren could have anything to do with it. Karen and John Sr. continued to support him, even as the police began to dig deeper into his background. His actions were becoming increasingly suspicious, and detectives could ignore the mounting evidence. It wasn't just the way he inserted himself into the case, it was his past. Darren had a criminal history, a record filled with strange and unsettling behavior. Yet, the most damning evidence came from Ashton bus station CCTV system. In a chilling twist, the CCTV footage from Ashton bus station provided the breakthrough the police had been desperately searching for. Just before 11:3 a.m. on May 5th, Jamie was seen standing alone, a small figure lost in a sea of commuters. Then a familiar face appeared, Darren Vickers, in the footage. Darren can be seen playing with Jamie's hair, a gesture that seemed far too intimate for a stranger. The footage was clear. Darren was seen leading Jamie back onto the 219 bus, preparing to head back to Manchester Piccadilly. But what happened next would send shockwaves through the investigation. Hours passed, and Darren and Jamie were seen together on the bus. It appeared that Darren had kept Jamie with him alone for much longer than anyone could have imagined. The police began to piece together a horrifying scenario. It seemed that Darren had taken advantage of Jamie's trust, luring him into a situation from which there was no escape. But they didn't have enough evidence to make an arrest. Not yet. The breakthrough came in late 1997 when the police received a shocking tip. Darren Vickers had allegedly told someone that he had buried Jamie's body in Reddish Vale, a wooded area near Stockport. The police immediately launched a search of the area, and days later they found Jamie, remains wrapped in tarpaulin and cloth. His signature blue Reebok tracksuit still clung to his small frame. The discovery was gut-wrenching. Jamie, the bright, playful boy who had disappeared so suddenly, was now gone forever. His life had been stolen from him, and the man who had once played the role of a concerned neighbor was now the prime suspect. Darren Vickers was arrested and charged with the murder of Jamie Lavis. At first he claimed it was an accident, but he quickly recanted and began to spin a bizarre defense, accusing Jamie's father John Senner of the crime. The police weren't too fooled. Darren's erratic behavior and his attempt to shift blame onto an innocent man only solidified their suspicions. The case went to trial in 1999, and the prosecution relied heavily on the damning CCTV evidence, as well as Darren's troubling criminal history. But it was Darren's own actions during the trial that sealed his fate. As he sat in the courtroom, his demeanor was cold and calculated, a far cry from the grieving neighbor who had once offered to help the Lavis family. In a dramatic turn of events, the jury found Darren Vickers guilty of the murder of Jamie Lavis. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 25 years. Years passed, and Darren's name became synonymous with the unspeakable crime he had committed. In 2023, with just a year left on his minimum sentence, Darren was referred to the parole board. But the board ruled that he was not suitable for release, and Darren Vickers will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars, under 24/7 supervision. The case of Jamie Lavis is one that will forever haunt the small community of Openshaw. It is a reminder that sometimes evil can hide behind the most familiar of faces. For Karen and John Lavis, the pain of losing their son will never fade. The memory of their bride-loving boy, stolen away in the most horrifying of ways, will live on in their hearts forever. And for Darren Vickers, there is no redemption, only the cold, unyielding walls of a prison cell where he will remain for the rest of his life.